here with Grayson DeJong, and she is an inspiration. She's just been one of those fierce warrior moms, that a pioneer that her son was diagnosed before there was anything. I refer to it as the dark ages of autism, especially the no internet, so that you can't even get bad information.
Correct.
Right. You know, I mean that's I know that sometimes it works against us now, but at least there's a place to go. But there wasn't when Pat's son was diagnosed with autism. So we had left it at the point where you had just read an article in the LA Times about autism, began asking questions, saying maybe this is the thing. You read the 2 books that were available in the library. At what point did you find the Autism Society of Los Angeles?
I think it was that article that I read in the paper. Now, Chris was only 18 months old, and I didn't join the Autism Society for another 3 years.
Okay.
Maybe I wanted to be in denial a little bit, because it was a pretty, the article kind of painted a very dark picture for his future. And I guess I didn't want to hear that or feel that. But when he was about 4 is when I joined the group. And there was just a handful of us. There was maybe 10 parents. And we used to meet in people's homes. The first one I went to was at Connie and Harvey's. Yeah. And I realized that that I may be a little bit different kind of parent, because they all were saying, well, is your child potty trained? And I said, yes, of course he's potty trained, thinking that every kid is potty trained by the time they're 4. And they said, oh, he must be high functioning. Oh, really? You know, he's barely talking.
Yeah, it takes your breath away.
Yeah.
When you start to see that, oh, okay, that's the range. Takes your breath away.
Right. He must be high functioning. And there were a couple of parents there whose daughter, one was a daughter, she was higher level, who had higher level kids. But most of them had kids that were pretty severely impacted by the disability. And at that point, Christopher was very impacted behaviorally. That still exists today for us.
Okay.
He's so much better. He is quite a gentleman now, and he's really learned a lot through the years. But we can talk about that process.
Yeah, because I think it's always so hard at this point, because I know that the parents want to know, so what kinds of things was he doing? And sometimes it's hard as a parent to talk about your child in terms of behaviors. But if you're willing to, what were the things, what were the hardest things? Because I think our parents learn from that.
The hardest thing is that he didn't sleep. Yeah. And many of our children have sleep disorder. He didn't relate to any of us. He was more, he really just looked to me to have his needs met, not that he was connected to me in any way. He avoided eye contact. He had tantrums. I mean, tantrums that seemed to come from nowhere. That I couldn't calm him. I can remember having him on my hip the first 3 years of his life, because to put him down was to have him scream and tantrum and be upset. All of his physical development was normal. He crawled, he turned over, he crawled, he walked within normal limits. Right. But the rest of it was not forthcoming. He wasn't relating. You know how most babies will smile and laugh at their brothers? Yes. Their siblings? Yeah. He could have cared less about his brother. And that created a problem for his brother relating to him. Sure. Because he thought, well, if he's not interested in me, why should I make the effort? Well, yeah. I mean, we don't realize it, that when we interact with a baby and the baby interacts with us, that is our reinforcer and makes us want to put more into it. And when we do something to somebody and we get nothing, we tend to back off. Well, I didn't. There you go. Okay, that's the difference between myself and others. Yes. Is that when I see a problem, I just can't let go of it.
There you go.
And maybe that's the OCD in me, and it comes.
Well,
I
thank
will
heavens
admit
for it, right? Thank heavens for it, because
Right.
sometimes these things come in handy. So you wouldn't leave him alone.
No.
You just kept on
I
coming.
just kept making him look at me, wanting him to engage with me. I would sing with him. I would play all of the little children's, clapping and finger play games. He would watch and he would look, but not respond.
Okay.
But it didn't matter. I just knew that what I needed to do was just bombard him with language. If we were riding in the car, I was pointing things out, whether he was looking or paying attention. Maybe he was, and maybe he wasn't, but I didn't care.
But you kept going. And then when you were by yourself in the 5 minutes that you maybe got a week by yourself, were you just devastated? Were you crying?
I cried all the time.
And were you thinking things like, why is this happening to me?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
But I wanted you to say that just because I think when sometimes people see somebody who's so strong like you and think, well, she's just better than I am.
Yes, I just didn't understand. I'm a religious person, and I just kept asking God, you took away one of my children, and now you've taken away this child. Literally.
Yeah.
You've taken away the essence of this beautiful child. He isn't relating to me. He isn't relating to his brother or his father. You know? And it was easier for my husband to kind of let me do everything.
Yeah.
Because then he could stay in denial that there was anything wrong.
Right.
Right. And he did for a long time.
And we all go through some period of denial, and some people longer than others. A lot of times the dads have a longer period of denial. Not always. Sometimes it's the moms that's longer, but I think it's part of the process.
Yes.
I just think that the longer you were in denial, the more you beat yourself up later on and go, why didn't I see it?
Why didn't I, do more? Why didn't I see it? And I still beat myself up. I still, even today, well, I could have done this and this and this and this. But I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
Teachers didn't know what they didn't know.
Well, let's start to talk about some of the things that happened educationally, because you got to a point where it's time for him to go to school.
Yes.
And this is before IDEA is on the scene. Yes. And since we've all been talking a lot about IDEA and what's going to happen, and there have been some rumblings about dismantling IDEA, I think it's really important that we have somebody here with us who had a child and went to go to the school system before IDEA. What was it like?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, because I already knew, because I was involved with the Autism Society, and they told me, well, they're going to just tell you they don't educate autistic.
Just keep him
children.
home. Nothing for you.
Right. Well, actually, there was something called Sedgwick funding, which funded non-public schools for the handicapped. Never autism, I mean specifically autism, because it was a rare disability in those days.
Yeah.
And
in fact, they at one point suggested that you pack him off and put him in a facility.
Yes, that was after he was sent to this school, and I won't mention names of schools or agencies that we are involved in, because to protect that,
right.
That piece of it. If somebody were to ask me personally, I would tell them, but I won't today. But anyway, he was sent to this school in North Hollywood. I knew that it wasn't going to be the best, but it was better than me having him with me 24/7.
Right.
And at least maybe they knew something I didn't know.
Right.
Okay. And so he was put in a classroom with 12 children with multiple disabilities.
Right.
With a teacher who did not understand the disability, didn't understand autism, and I tried to educate her a little, but I don't think she was hearing me. I was just a parent, and you have to remember, parents weren't very respected in those days.
Yeah.
Within 2 months, the principal called me into her office, and she said, bring your husband with you. And I thought that was an odd request. And she said, and I didn't show up with my husband because he had a meeting that morning. And she said, I'm sorry that he isn't here, but I have to tell you this. Christopher does not fit into our school.
And this was the school that was for the handicapped
Yes.
children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Christopher doesn't fit into this school. His behavior is much too difficult. And we are going to tell you that he needs to leave here. Also, the best thing that you can do for your child is to tomorrow go down to Camarillo State Hospital and place him there, because he will cause you nothing but heartache and headache for the rest of your lives. And I remember that thought, and it's been how many years?
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah.
emotional.
Devastating.
Still.
It's a wound.
And driving home on the freeway,
Yeah.
thinking, oh my goodness, this is really bad.
Yeah.
And maybe I've been in a little bit of denial here. But I called my husband at work and I said, you need to come home now.
Yeah.
And he did. And I told him what they said. And we just looked at each other and said, no, this is not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I resolved then that he would never be placed in a state hospital situation ever.
There you go.
And so that's when the fight began. That's when I said, they're going to educate my kid.
Yeah.
But I already knew about a program that was going on at UCLA, the Neuropsychiatric Institute. I knew that there was an autism. Yeah, thank you.
We always keep tissues here.
Yes.
We need them almost on a daily basis.
Yeah. I mean, you know how difficult. Imagine you've got a baby, and they're telling you to put him away. Just put him in a hospital and forget him.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that.
On the day that my son was diagnosed, the doctor that diagnosed him, and when I got emotional about it, she said, well, I've been practicing for 50 years, and just be glad, because 50 years ago, I would have told you to institutionalize this baby. He was 2.5, and I said, this child? And she said, yep, I would have told you to lock him up in an institution and walk away and never think of him again. Yeah. And I have never forgotten that, because I thought, well, just because of the year in which I live, I did not, I wasn't.
You didn't have to experience that.
No, but I felt the narrow miss of it and cried for hours over that, imagining a mother taking my child and saying, okay, I'm walking away.
Absolutely.
And how horrifying that was to me.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, I digress and I interrupt. But so you knew that you were in for the fight, but IDEA wasn't there.
No, it wasn't there. However, because I was involved with the Autism Society, I also knew that there was new legislation being put into place for this purpose, because the school districts could deny education for children that they felt they could not manage.
Did everybody hear that? Because that's what happens when you don't have a mandate
laws
that says
Absolutely.
That you have to educate. Then the kids stayed home. That is what happened.
Boy, if they ever decide to take away IDEA, then it was PL 94-142, Public Law 94-142, and that was in place until IDEA came, and I think that was in 2004 or something like that, IDEA. But we had PL 94-142. But I knew that was coming. But I also knew that we needed a real diagnosis.
Yeah.
And so I called the Neuropsychiatric Institute, and fortunately they had a bed for him there, a place for him. And I knew it was a research hospital. They were one of the very few research hospitals doing anything about autism.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ritvo was his physician there. And Ed Ritvo is older now, and I don't know if he's still around, but he really kind, wonderful man. Lovas was doing his thing there, and I already knew that I didn't want any part of that. Because he was using cattle prods on children, and I just, or electrical impulses on children. I knew I didn't want any part of that. So Ritvo's program was good for us. We placed him there for 6 months. I had to drive him there every morning and pick him up from UCLA every afternoon, driving that 405. It wasn't bad like it is today, but it was still a long drive for me. But it was okay, I did it. because my son was the first child that they said he has an awareness that the rest of our kids don't.
That had to have given you hope.
It did. It did. But I can't help but think that part of that was what I had been doing with him. You know,
I agree.
Really wanted him in my world, not in his own self stimulating world.
Yeah.